Welcome again, everyone. I'm Diana Mason. I'm your Senate President this year, and thank you for attending the first Senate meeting of 2026. As always, everyone can follow the agenda on the Senate website, and I will do my best to facilitate a meaningful, productive meeting in which participants can be heard and included. As a Senate member, when you want to participate, please use the raise hand feature in Zoom, and you'll be placed in the queue to be called on, and I will announce when you have the floor. So I call this meeting to order at 3:04 p.m. As we kick off the new term and new year, I want to acknowledge that things feel really heavy right now. Every news article seems to me, at least, that is designed to attempt to strike at my values and my concern for our community here and at the UO and across the country. Also, last week's violence on the streets of Minneapolis and an additional shooting in Portland have had on all members of community just an intense amount of fear, anxiety, anger, and concern. I know because I feel it too. And in order to try to stay focused on my role as a teacher, faculty colleague, and in the Senate, I have been reflecting a lot about the meaning of community and what solidarity means. To me, it means supporting each other, speaking out on behalf of those who are vulnerable or for those who are in fear of speaking out themselves, and continuing to voice our values and beliefs. I remain committed to a community that values all of its people as equal participants, and am continuing to work towards that ideal. To that end, in one of our reports today, we have invited Angela Chong and other members of the Senate Student Life team, specifically Jimmy Howard and Justine Carpenter, joined by UOPD Chief Jason Wade, to speak a little bit about ongoing federal actions, the impact on our students, and steps being done to protect our community. They will also share what our staff and faculty can do to support students who may be feeling particularly vulnerable at the moment. In addition, as part of our standing responsibilities to shared governance, we also will be hearing from Katie Krieger about the process to updating faculty policies, both bargaining unit faculty and non-bargaining unit faculty. Many of these, the policies that we have are now decades out of date, and we need to get them aligned with both state and federal law, as well as our collective bargaining agreement. We are reviewing one updated policy today, and Katie will share her plans for bringing a full package of policies for non-bargaining unit faculty later this term or next. We also have Abhijit Pandit to update us on the rollout of MyUO and other IT-related changes that are coming down the pike here on campus. So now it's time for the ASUO updates, and ASU President Priscilla Moreno will be providing the ASU report today. President Moreno, you have the floor.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me here today. I have a couple of exciting updates from the executive side of ASUO. For starters, today we're launching our ASUO X Org series, where we partner with different student organizations to connect their orgs with as many students as possible. It's essentially a club fair, but it's indoors because it's not the best weather outside right now. So really exciting. We are hosting over 100 organizations in about an hour. And we're also attending legislative days. As Diana Mason mentioned, Quadrian is there right now. We're securing co-sponsors this week for our legislative concept on increasing and strengthening student government autonomy across the Oregon public universities. So we're really excited about that. I had the opportunity to go up yesterday and talk to our representatives and senators. And another exciting initiative we started last term is termly general assemblies called State of the University, where we bring together hundreds of students to share the problems they see on campus and discuss how we can solve them together. Our next General Assembly is on January 27th. So to gear up for that, we have been going classroom to classroom collecting a quick survey and RSVPs for the event. And so far, we have gotten over 300 filled out interest forms and are from 50 different classes. So it's been a great partnership with ASUO and faculty, and also just meeting students where they are, which is their classrooms. And lastly, I wanted to recap one of the biggest successes from last term, which was our 24-hour library pilot program. This is one of our big campaign promises in the spring, so we were happy to partner with UO Libraries to open the science library for 24 hours during week 10 and finals week. And we had a great recap meeting with them last week to discuss the usage, and we're able to share nearly 1,000 responses that we got from students sharing their support for the program. And using the data that they had, we found that there were over 12,000 additional study hours used during the pilot program, which is really, really awesome. So thank you all for having me today.
Thank you, President Marino. It's great to have you. So the next item on the agenda today is to approve the minutes from our last meeting. So are there any questions or changes to the minutes from our December 3rd meeting? Okay. Does anyone move to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Okay, great. Second. Anybody like to second? Okay, in the chat, I see the seconds. Okay, so without objection, I'd like to approve the minutes from the December 3rd meeting. Thank you very much. All right, so next we have remarks from President Carl Schulz, and I'd like to welcome him to our meeting today. And President Schulz, you now have the floor.
Thank you, Diana. It's great to see you, and it's great to see everybody here, and it's great to be here. As we start another term, I want to speak today about a challenge for our higher education and how we might meet this challenge together, making a better world for ourselves, our students, and our communities. Specifically, I want to talk about polling, both some results that a pollster friend shared with me. The pollster friend is named Ken Goldstein, and polling results from the Pew Research Center. It wasn't that long ago that universities were deeply trusted as a source of progress and national pride. The esteem for universities has changed sharply over the last decade. Now colleges are being viewed through the same partisan lenses that has eroded trust in government and media. Our current challenges are particularly acute as we have watched for more than a year the Trump administration attack institutions of higher learning, trying to force them to conform to a specific set of ideologies or pay the consequences. While the public's political leanings have some influence on polling results, there is a trend to more negative view of what we do across party lines. It shows the public is rethinking whether universities still serve them. This isn't about Republicans or Democrats or one generation questioning the utility of a college degree. It's a broad-based loss of faith in the value proposition of college itself. The numbers are grave. Only 18% of Americans say they have a great deal of confidence in higher education. Their skepticism is rooted in perceived poor performance in key areas. 79% of adults give colleges negative marks for failing to keep tuition affordable. Strong majorities also doubt our ability to deliver core education value or prepare students for well-paying jobs and develop their critical thinking skills. Another concern with the loss of trust comes from the fact that nearly a half of Americans express negative views about whether universities expose students to a wide range of opinions and viewpoints. Altogether, more than half the country believes that higher education is an unaffordable and culturally restrictive system that fails to deliver on its foundational promises of intellectual and economic advancement. I find these results profoundly troubling. Part of my reaction comes from a disconnect between perception and reality. For example, while college is not just a financial investment, on average, it pays off very, very well. College typically costs roughly $100,000 in tuition and foregone earnings over 4 years. Graduates tend to earn around $35,000 or 88% more per year than high school graduates for the next 40 or so years of their working lives. These numbers imply college has a rate of return that beats all other conventional financial investments. It's the normal person's chance to invest like Warren Buffett. 60% of UO students graduate with no debt. This statistic doesn't include Parent Plus loans, but it turns out very few families have Parent Plus loans and no subsidized or unsubsidized direct loans. In short, our financial aid offerings give our students a chance to earn their degrees and not be set back by crippling debt after graduation. And I am proud of the fact that our instructors embrace the challenge of ensuring that all serious perspectives on issues that arise as part of course material are presented. I'll add, while anecdotal, that in a recent conversation I had with ASUO student leaders, they appreciated the varied perspectives they encountered in their classes. So we are dealing with dangerous perceptions that do not necessarily comport with reality. But these perceptions influence the state legislature and public support. People aren't clamoring to say universities are doing great things and the return on investment of public dollars is high. And that's a problem for us. So what do? I want to find ways to respect and honor faculty and staff even more than we currently do. For us to find all the things we have in common. When it seems like the world is against us and public universities are facing all sorts of external pressures, how do we protect ourselves, our mission, and our students? One way is to show the world that we are a unified front, that the UO is moving together toward something great. I'm optimistic about our ability to show through our work that we are still vitally important to the economic well-being of our state and region, and that a college degree from the UO is something to be valued. I interact with donors, alumni, business leaders, and state and federal legislators, many of whom express views in line with the Pew polling results. A large part of my job is to convince and show them the other side of the great work you all are doing, of the incredible research we are performing, and the lives that we're changing. We want to continue to focus on things that matter, helping our students graduate on time and successfully knowledge the college to whatever is next transition are two pillars of our strategic plan. And along with this body and every unit across the university, we're focusing on ways to make sure our graduates are positioned to thrive in the workforce. We are also proving that we are vital to the state's economy. We're partnering with Oregon State University to create an innovation corridor in the southern Willamette Valley, working with local chambers of commerce and businesses so that when our students graduate, they have the opportunity to stay in the state. Our recent economic impact study also shows that we return more than $15 for every state dollar spent on the UO. At the end of his memo, my friend says that the polling numbers aren't really about rejection, but rather about expectation. Americans still want their universities to succeed. They just want them to do so on terms that feel fair, affordable, and aligned with public purpose. Our challenge is to show the citizens of Oregon and the American people that we are listening and leading. At the University of Oregon, we want to shape the next generation of thinkers. We want to advance knowledge of what it means to be human. We want our campuses to be places where students can come and thrive under the tutelage of world-class educators, where academic freedom and exposure to other viewpoints isn't shunned, but celebrated. And that's where I have the greatest optimism. We have outstanding people here. All of us fortunate to spend time at the University of Oregon or other great colleges or universities understand the important transformative work that occurs here every day. Let's do all we can to elevate this work, help spread the word to our communities, civic leaders, elected officials, businesses, unions, and other societal stakeholders. Our future will depend on effectively doing so. So thank you.
Thank you, President Schultz. We have time for a couple of questions if folks have any, like to ask anything. Senator McKenna.
Yes, thank you very much for that. And I really like your comments and what you had to say. And I wonder if you have some plans for making them more public, maybe writing an op-ed somewhere, going and being interviewed on some shows so that you could get the story, not just of UO, but UO in particular, but higher education out there in front of people in the state.
Senator McKenna, thank you for the suggestion. I will talk with our communicators. We do, of course, post comments to the University Senate, and I know people flock to them and want to read them. Slightly tongue-in-cheek there, but to try to have more visibility, this is it's a big issue for all of us. I spent an enormous time talking to external stakeholders and trying to elevate the message. Certainly any time that I get in front of alums, I'm talking about things like this, but trying to work collectively with you all to amplify the message is really critical.
Thank you. Senator Pack?
Yes, I also have a question about since our state is often not providing very much funding, I think it was said 47th in the nation. Is there any way that this information that you've shared could be relayed to our state leaders?
Yeah, Senator Pack, thank you for the question. I try to do it all the time so that we are number 46 in public funding for public four-year higher colleges and universities in the country. Of the 7 publics of the state, the four-year publics, we're dead last in per student funding. Even per Oregonian funding, there's a series of adjustments to the funding formulas that bluntly really disadvantage the University of Oregon. I spend a lot of time talking to legislators about this. The governor and other political leaders have different priorities. K through 12 ends up being quite well supported in the state, given our relative wealth. And interestingly enough, our 2-year community colleges are pretty well supported. And so it's an effort to try to nudge and make the case that the 4-year colleges and universities really are the foundations for prosperity in the state. Part of the idea behind the Southern Willamette Valley Innovation Corridor is to get more partners, right? So the university president gets up and screams as loud as he can about the value of the investment. People can be pretty cynical and think, well, yep, that's what you're paid to do. And so having other stakeholders, and that's what I'm talking about, sort of civic leaders or businesses or labor unions or others, to talk about the value of public four-year higher education is part of the necessarily long-run agenda.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, thank you, President Schultz, for joining us this meeting. And I know you're at all of our meetings, but it's a special treat when you are able to speak with us and take questions. So thank you.
President Mason, thank you for the opportunity. It's great to see everyone, and I look forward to the rest of the meeting.
Great. Thank you. All right. So next, we have one new item of business today. As mentioned earlier, Katie Krieger, our Interim Director of Faculty Personnel and Policy, has been working hard to update our faculty policies. She's introducing an updated policy today on faculty fellowships, which you can see on this via the Senate agenda. Katie, I know you're here. I saw you come in earlier. You now have the floor. And Bettina or Sandy, if you're able to post for Katie the proposed policy.
Excellent. Thanks for having me here. And I will share the red line version, which is what you all have access to on the Senate agenda. So thank you, Bettina and Sandy, for posting that. This is a fellowship policy that does impact our faculty, and it's to really clarify our current process. As you can see in this last updated, it's 1993. That's not great. We want to make sure that we get that in alignment with our actual practice. What do the schools and colleges do? What does the Office of the Vice President for Research and Innovation do? And how does the Office of the Provost really view these major fellowships? So we went through this policy, and the clarifications that you'll see in the language are really to provide faculty with an understanding of the terms and conditions on how UO will supplement major faculty fellowships in a non-sabbatical year. So throughout this policy statement, other than cleaning up some of the basic language and trying to remove some of the specific processes, since those tend to change faster than Big P policy, we also made sure to provide a very clear descriptor of an eligible faculty fellowship. So when faculty are applying to these, they understand if it's eligible under this policy. For example, on this bullet point 2, the fellowship award amount must be at minimum 30% of the recipient's base pay at UO, making the salary top off from UO akin to a matching grant. So faculty can really go through and read the fellowship that they're applying for and make sure that it does apply here. And then they can proceed to know that OVPRI will be the one paying them via university payroll. So if they're opening up their pay stub, it's going to show a different code and a different office compared to their normal paycheck, for example. So kind of helping to make the process transparent for faculty and set expectations before they even apply. And then, of course, we wanted to broaden this language here in bullet point 8 to include faculty who are going up for fellowships for creative activity. We've obviously hired a wealth of faculty with broad experience. We have a lot of professional schools who are doing incredible work, and there are more opportunities in the creative activity major fellowship space. So we wanted to account for that and make sure that those faculty were represented in this policy. We did give some examples. This list is not completely full. Of course, there's always new prestigious fellowships that do come up, but we did give folks an indicator of which ones we already know are going to be applicable under this policy, and actually give faculty a list, especially newer associate professors that have just received tenure, for a space that they can look for those major fellowships on a non-sabbatical year. And then this last bit was to clean up some specifics that no longer apply. So again, kind of mirroring our process and what we do in our offices now and making sure the policy covers that. I will say that when I met with Senate Executive last week, we had a great conversation about this policy, and Senator Casement brought up a great question about a similar policy or process for graduate students. So I chatted with Krista Chronister in the grad school, and I can happily report that we have a process if graduate students go up for fellowships while they're here at the university, and we do have a way to supplement their income and take a look at those cases. They can work with their faculty advisor, and they can work with the grad school and OVPRI to make that happen. I can provide that information as a link to Senate if we want to post it there. Grad school does have a web page on this, which is great. I did want to loop back to that comment from Senate Exec and say that we have mirrored these processes for graduate students as well.
Great. So just to confirm, Katie, this new policy is basically what we have been doing in practice for quite some time. So it just kind of codifies the current practice. We felt that it was important for the full Senate to have a chance to review and affirm this policy. We'll be voting on it at the next meeting. But do folks have any additional questions, clarifying questions, concerns that you'd like to ask? Let me get up here. All right, well, seeing no questions, that's great. So we can move on. I also invited Katie to come and speak with us about a handbook of policies that she's assembling right now. So this is our first of our reports today. We're moving through things really fast today. This is the first of our reports today. Katie explained to us at executive last week is that there are actually two different types of faculty here on campus. There's bargaining unit faculty, and there's non-bargaining unit faculty. So faculty who are supervising other faculty, department heads, things like that, move into the non-bargaining unit faculty in relevance to the collective bargaining agreement with United Academics. Some of us may move back and forth during these categories during our time here. Sometimes we might be in one for a year and then out for 3 and then back in. So in addition to a lot of our faculty policies being out of date, our non-bargaining unit faculty policies are particularly out of date and need a lot of revision. So Katie's strategy will be to sort of assemble all of the relevant policies as they pertain to non-bargaining unit faculty and then publishing a single handbook. So I wanted to turn it over to her to kind of describe the process and the kinds of policies that we're talking about. She walked us through all of this last week. Where they can mirror the CBA, they will, but there'll be some departures. And so we might want to talk a little bit about differences in how things may be administered. So I'll turn it over to you, Katie.
Great, thank you. I'll share screen again. And I did share this document with Bettina, and so we can absolutely distribute this proposal document as well as the linked faculty policies crosswalk if folks really like to read thoroughly and give feedback. And I'm always happy to get feedback via Teams or email, or we can set up a meeting. Happy to chat with folks. But we did really want to take a new approach to non-bargaining unit faculty policies. And wherever the collective bargaining agreement from United Academics speaks on faculty policies, we often have to make sure that our non-bargaining unit faculty have a similar policy on the books. Unfortunately, we've not been able to keep pace, and we're not the only ones. Pretty much all unionized universities are on the 3-year bargaining cycle with their unions, and their non-bargaining unit faculty policies often get out of step rather quickly. 3 years is pretty quick, especially if you're talking about a large shared governance policy process. And we have one, and we need to engage with it to create the best policies. So with that in mind, we wanted to offload some of these non-bargaining unit faculty policies into a policy handbook so that we have a singular, streamlined, accessible handbook for those non-bargaining unit faculty. And as President Mason pointed out, there are a lot of faculty who on an annual basis or a triannual basis will move between being a bargaining unit faculty member and not. And so they have to keep pace with multiple policies, and it's difficult when you're looking in 5 or 6 different places, or we just don't have an updated policy on a particular topic. We want to clarify the level of policies for faculty as well. We want to get rid of any outdated policies that no longer apply. Some of the policies in our library are actually processes that are run by HR or are governed by Oregon law. So we don't want to have outdated policies even accessible to folks. And then we have school and college level policy and unit level policy, which really is going to be the most relevant for a faculty member's day-to-day processes. What are their professional responsibilities? What does teaching look like for a career faculty in human phys? What do librarians need to do to be promoted? So all of these things are in unit level policies, and those are created by the faculty for the faculty, regardless of bargaining status. So we wanted to make sure that we defer to those policies where it makes sense and that we only keep high level policies in the big UO policy library. We also wanted to create a process to regularly review and update. As mentioned, some of these policies go back to the 80s or 90s when we were a part of the Oregon University system. These policies no longer serve us. We need a better way to look at these policies, get them in alignment with practice, respond to Oregon state law and legislative session, which happens every year or biannually. And so having a handbook allows us to address a holistic view of this non-bargaining unit faculty policy landscape. And it allows us to really stay rooted in shared governance and have a work group to take on the revisions that need to be done, creating any new policy, and of course, getting rid of old policies. So having a participatory process that relies on a broad spectrum of constituents is really important. And we're unable to do that right now when we're so locked in with the policies that we have. On the faculty policies crosswalk, I have walked through with my colleagues in employee labor relations and in general counsel, and we've looked at where a lot of these policies in the policy library are already covered in the collective bargaining agreement for bargaining unit faculty, or where unit or school policy or an HR process fills the gap and we no longer need a policy. On this spreadsheet, rows 2 through 17, so quite a few policies, we would like to offload these into a faculty policy handbook for non-bargaining unit faculty. And that is to satisfy the goals that I just went over and to make sure that we are aligned with Oregon law, with HR processes, and we're really keeping in alignment with the work that we're already doing. And as President Mason pointed out, when we're able to mirror the collective bargaining agreement, for example, with promotion and tenure and the process that an assistant professor, for example, might go through, that is clearly laid out in the collective bargaining agreement. It's something that the Office of the Provost likes to have as a shared process across the board for all faculty. But where it might be different for a non-bargaining unit faculty member in the law school, if they're a career faculty, they go through a different 6-year review process. And so they have a slight deviation from what the collective bargaining agreement says. So we can't easily just fall back to the CBA, and we shouldn't because they're a non-bargaining unit. We can certainly mirror those processes. Some of these we've pointed out that, classification and rank, that's shared across faculty. It doesn't matter a bargaining unit or not. But there are some specifics for non-bargaining unit folks, specifically unit heads, that do need to be called out and covered. And we do need policies that satisfy their needs as well. Also on this spreadsheet, you'll see there are a few policies. We just went over one, so 3 out of the 4 are left. And so we would revise and keep these in the policy library. These are the ones in green, rows 18 through 21 here. And these we are hoping the 20 and 21 here to revise in winter 2026 and get those updated in the policy library, and then to work on 18 and 19 with HR and bring those through Senate as well. We would also in spring, assuming there's time on the agenda, and I'll coordinate with Sandy about that, but we would like to repeal some of these other policies that we adopted from the OUS system board, and we never repealed them when we should have. We don't even follow some of these. We have very different offices in place. Those policies were on the books when we were part of a much larger system. Now we stand on our own and have our own board of trustees. So we can get rid of some of these, which is exciting. And then we do have a few that are slightly sticky here, rows 28 through 30. This is in the blue. And a lot of these policies are broad because they include all employees, so not just faculty. So we can't offload them into a handbook. We can't necessarily get rid of them. We have to keep these on the books, but they're a much larger conversation that include sort of faculty, personnel, and policy folks, but they go beyond that to really be in the HR space because they involve other collective bargaining agreements with SEIU and GTFF. And then we have employee labor relations helping with that in general counsel. And then the 31 through 33 on this spreadsheet, we have already taken care of. We've revised those. Those policies are set, and we've seen great things come out of those. A lot of clarity. The employee grievance policy, for example, has been very successful and is a really good example of keeping a high-level policy that's going to fit with folks who it needs to apply to. So that's the rundown of those. Happy to chat a little bit further, but I'll go back to the proposal here. And we did want to put forward some examples. So folks are trying to really visualize what a handbook like this might look like in terms of non-bargaining unit policies. I've found some examples because other institutions are working on this as well. 45 minutes up the road, Oregon State University is really having this conversation to figure out how to provide resources to faculty, but flag specific content for non-bargaining unit faculty. The University of California system has moved to having a collective bargaining agreement for those folks. And for anyone not covered in the CBA, they use the academic personnel manual. So that's a potentially good model for us. Granted, UO has its own specifics that we'll need to pay attention to, but these examples can really help us look at how a unionized campus approaches covering policy for their non-bargaining unit folks. And we do have some suggested next steps. After talking with you all, I'm going to pull together a really robust work group to start looking at the form and function of the handbook and really trying to assess, using that crosswalk document I just showed you all, the policy revisions that we can take care of and move those into the handbook, and then bring it as a full package in front of this group in a rather quick timeline, I hope. So that is the overview of the non-bargaining unit faculty policy handbook.
So could you share your hoped for timeline?
Yeah.
Katie?
I would like the work group to get going as soon as possible. So I'd like folks identified and committed to the group by the end of January. And then we would take winter and spring to really run through all the policy drafts. General Counsel has, really graciously offered to help us with a lot of the drafting. We know that's a really big lift, and we don't want to put that on faculty or other administrators. So General Counsel, Employee Labor Relations, and myself from Office of the Provost are going to do that lift to present some revised versions to the group. And then, of course, we'll do some background research and those sorts of things. And I'll provide project management, which should hopefully spur the timeline on, with the hope of fall 2026, got that one right, bringing this in front of Senate and being able to get it approved and ready for the 26-27 academic year.
Great. Thank you. Any questions for Katie? Vice Provost Irvin.
Hi, Katie, thank you. That was terrific. I just want to add, just to clarify, we have something that we call a faculty handbook right now. It's an online compendium of resources for faculty. So I do hope in the future we will be calling this this faculty handbook for non-bargaining unit faculty members something different, like the manual like UC Berkeley uses or whatever. So, all right, just to make sure people aren't confused between these two different things. Thanks.
Thank you, Renee. Senator Winden.
Hi, thanks for sharing this information with us, Katie. Could you explain again the purpose of the policy library and why going forward for non-bargaining faculty, we have both a policy library and a handbook, depending on what the policy is about?
Yeah, so our larger UO policy library hosts policies from every major office. So the academic, faculty-facing policies are a part of it. We also have policies from student life, from HR. It really just governs the operations and employment matters and such of the university. Right now, a faculty member in a bargaining unit would look at the collective bargaining agreement and the UO policy library. The non-bargaining unit folks often look at the policy library, and then there's missing policies that are not present. And so sometimes what happens, and this is on the proposal document, happy to, again, share that. What has happened over the past maybe 5 to 10 years is that when policies aren't present in the policy library, offices will handle those cases very differently. So we have a difference in approach depending on who is administering the process. And sometimes Officer of Administration policies are applied to non-bargaining unit faculty when they shouldn't be. So this is an opportunity for us to create a separate space that attends to non-bargaining unit faculty in a way that the policy library never really could, and currently doesn't. So, and it also just clarifies and hopefully streamlines where these faculty can find their information. And my hope is to have a flow chart that says, are you represented or not? Here are your two places to look, instead of trying to bop around and Google very quickly which policies apply or not, to you as a faculty member.
Okay, and did you say that the policies in the non-bargaining unit handbook are expected for the most part to mirror the policies in the collective bargaining agreement?
Only where it makes sense. So some of the policies, we already follow these processes when it comes to promotion and tenure. There's a policy right now in the policy library about academic classification and rank. And so when we make a change in the collective bargaining agreement, which we just did in the new iteration to class and rank, that will be mirrored in this policy handbook, and it needs to be mirrored in the policy library. So this is our opportunity to mirror the collective bargaining agreement where it makes sense to do so, and where we share the process across the board. Sabbatical is another that we have a policy on, and we handle sabbatical the same regardless of a faculty member being represented or not.
Thank you,
Great,
Katie.
thank you.
Any other questions? I think one thing that seems important to me, so we don't get into this situation again, and you mentioned this last week as well, is a process for regular review and updating moving forward. So actually having like a calendar, because as you pointed out, we have a new collective bargaining process happening every 3 years, and policies could end up being tweaked from that, as well as unit level policies are often tweaked from that. So can you talk a little bit about that, your sort of vision for sort of keeping these up to date?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think what would be ideal, and we're very open to the work group helping us, especially folks from Senate, as well as faculty themselves, administrators, coming up with a timeline that makes a lot of sense for review and update. But I think a standard 3-year cycle also makes sense here. That when we're making changes to websites and to forms and to processes, that we're doing that in response to a change in the collective bargaining agreement and a change in policy. So expecting that when a new collective bargaining agreement is signed, that we also need to review and update any potential policies and processes that impact non-bargaining unit faculty members as well. And having that sort of trail after the CBA bargaining process, I think makes a lot of sense and helps a lot for coordination. Right now, Sandy and Bettina and I do a lot of work in the shadows to try to not eat up too much agenda time for Senate to do a lot of this policy review and update. And this would put policies in front of you all in bulk at the beginning of an academic year every so often on a regularized schedule.
Yeah, I think it'll be helpful when you're ready to do that this fall, if for the first round, to really make sure that we flag any sort of substantive departures from previous policy, just so folks aren't going to read every single line of every single document, but be able to have a conversation about the things that will have the most impact on us.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll have some executive summaries for folks in those substantive changes and make sure everyone's aware of the major things versus, maybe just updating the language to be more inclusive in terms of pronouns, for example. That's a big one we've been pushing on. So, yeah.
Great. Thank you. Senator Casement.
Piggybacking on your comment just now, and maybe Andy's comment as well, it might be helpful to flag areas where the non-bargaining unit manual differs from the bargaining unit policies in areas in particular where it is content that's included in the bargaining unit, but does not apply to non-bargaining unit faculty.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the models we've provided and digging into those with the work group, I'm excited to hear from faculty what they respond to, and that immediate flag of knowing, hey, this is a little different because I'm not represented by United Academics. The grievance process is a really good example. That the processes themselves look similar, but there are some deviations. Because you'll be getting support from employee labor relations, not necessarily from United Academics, for example. So yeah, excited for faculty feedback to help us really shape the form of this policy set for faculty.
Great. Any other questions? All right. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Katie. This is important work and way down in the weeds. So I really, really appreciate your attention to all the details and being able to bring us policies that are ready to be discussed and considered. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yep. All right, great. So next, I would like to invite Angela Chong and her team, along with UOPD Chief Jason Wade, to discuss student rights and safety. So I'm going to turn over the floor to Angela and for kind of a big overview, and then we can go into some specifics, and then there'll be time for questions as well. I just heard that Abhijit isn't able to make it today. I sent him the wrong date, so it's my responsibility. But hope we'll have him at our next meeting. So Angela, I would like to turn it over to you.
Thank you, President Mason. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for the invitation to come and spend time in community with you as Senate. I have some prepared remarks before I turn the floor over to some of my colleagues. But I want to start this conversation with an acknowledgement of the current reality in which we are living and where our students are learning. We've seen federal immigration enforcement evolve from one that may have been instilling fear to one that is where we are experiencing violence and unfortunately tragedy. This moment certainly reflects one of the most uncertain, frightening, and divisive times of our nation, and the University of Oregon and other institutions of higher education and cities are not immune from these feelings. It goes without saying, but I will say it anyway. There are members of our community that are fearful for themselves, family members, they're fearful for their friends, their colleagues, and of course, their students. I brought my team today, along with our colleague, Chief Jason Wade, to share information about how student life is supporting undocumented and mixed status students, as that is our scope, and answer questions to the best of our ability about the conduct process. And Chief Wade will talk about the role of UOPD and safety measures should ICE interact with our community. This is a complex and difficult topic, and addressing such a topic in a brief public recorded meeting comes with its own complexities. Our focus will be on our values, on supporting our students, on transparency of process, and recognizing that it would be impossible for us to predict or answer questions about hypotheticals, for example, where incidents are nuanced at best. So to frame this conversation, the university's commitment to safety, support, and a community where all are welcome remains the same. The role of sustaining safety is paramount beyond all else, and consistent policy, protocols, and robust support systems are the tools that every institution must rely upon to fulfill our responsibility to the safety of our community. So with that framing, I am going to turn it over to my colleague, Justine Carpenter, to talk about supports that are available to our students in student life. Justine?
Thank you. Thank you all so much for having me. I am Justine Carpenter. I work in the Office of the Dean of Students as Associate Dean of Students and Director of Community and Belonging. Part of my work is being the point person. I have the privilege of being the point person on campus for our Dreamer immigrant students since 2017. And that work we take very seriously. And it's not just myself, but we also have, you may be aware of our whole UO Dreamers working group across campus, which is a group of faculty and staff that meet regularly to support our students. Angela was describing really what the current state is, what our impacts are here facing now in 2026, and certainly we're hearing about those from our students. We are used to hearing about challenges from our students, and so that is not new. There has always been financial stress. There is always fear involved, and that remains today. One of the things that we're seeing that is, of course, increasing is the fear and anxiety around law enforcement, and specifically the impact that we are seeing it happen not just in our students who may have an immigration status that it's precarious, but also students who belong to mixed status families. And just to kind of give you some information, those are many students who may be here studying, and their own status is not in question, but they have family members, they have parents whose status is at risk, and they're seeing the impact of that. Oftentimes, some of those impacts we're seeing are their financial stress because the parent or person at risk may stop working and getting as many work hours due to fear. Sometimes the student themselves are limiting where they're going. They may decide to go to school, to classes and to home, and to classes and to home. And really, again, that's that fear, the physical and mental health consequences that they're feeling. And then the reality is, if there is a parent who is detained, we're seeing that greatly affect the student as well, because they have to return home to support the family, sometimes for a very short period of time to support and interpret and get things in order, and sometimes for longer to help make up the loss of that income. So we are making sure that we have supports in place to help them transition and determine what is best for them, and if they're able to remain in school during this time that their family is facing this crisis, and that we're making those connections certainly as best as possible. What we provide directly to students are personal consultations based on their individual situation. Sometimes that includes a referral to an academic advisor. It might include a referral to our care and advocacy program or basic needs programs, and many other programs, Center for Multicultural Academic Excellence, CMAE. There are many different sort of outreaches that we have and levers we can pull to support students depending on their situation. Oftentimes, students want to have contact with immigration legal services, and we certainly give advice about the best way to do that, as well as providing when we can, or providing referrals and resources, identifying scholarships, which ones they're available, which ones they're eligible for, as well as emergency funding that's open to all UO students when possible. So what we're hearing a lot of now is that students need more than the typical supports we've been providing. And so we are currently planning our Know Your Rights training. It's a webinar that's going to be provided to us from an immigration attorney from the Innovation Law Lab, which is based out of Portland. That training is available to all UO students. It's going to be out in the Quick Quacks this week. It is also being distributed through social media. And the link to that training for students to register is at the top of the website, which is the UO Immigrant website. If you go into the main page of the University of Oregon and type in immigrant or type in Dreamer, it will pull you up, and the registration for that is the top of that page. Other things that we're doing, now, of course, it's really important for students to feel empowered, to know their rights, to feel what is okay for them, what is, what kind of questions they might have. So we're providing this in a Zoom webinar format where no one needs to show their identity, but question and answers will be available to be answered. We're also asking members of our General Counsel's office to be on that training as well, on that Zoom as well. And Jessica Price will be joining us to offer any comments that the trainer might have that are that might be follow-up for UO specific questions, as well as to handle any UO specific questions that might come up. The other two things I wanted to mention, we are gearing up for our annual Dreamer Ally training, which is Friday, February 27th. That is being shared widely today. You may have seen it hopefully already on an email. If not, it'll keep spreading. The registration for that training is on the same web page at the very bottom. Scroll down, it'll be for faculty and staff to register for that. So that is a training that we are working hard to change and alter for this specific circumstances this year. So it's going to look a little different. And I was asked, I do know that the Global Engagement is also planning another event. It's coming up. It's not on the website yet, but it's scheduled for February 11th. And so we will watch for that as well for students. The other reminder I wanted to give individuals is that we hold students' confidentiality and their situation at the utmost. We do not share anything or any information related to student status. So I want to ensure if anyone has questions about how to make those practices, I'm happy to share how we can have conversations without sort of outing individual students. And with that, I will need my time here.
Great. Angela, would you like Chief Wade to go next, or what was your plan?
I think we have Dean Jimmy Howard.
Okay, Dean Jimmy Howard, yes.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. So Jimmy Howard, it's nice to see you folks again. I serve as the Associate Vice President for Student Life and Dean of Students. And I just wanted to talk a little bit about a couple of conduct pieces related to protest and civil disobedience. So first, I'd like to say that I think as university officials and as the Dean of Students, one of my main messages to students is that peaceful protest, demonstration, and expression is encouraged, but also mentorship is really critical here. So we hear a lot that students want to understand their rights, campus expectations, and how to engage in expression in ways that don't violate our policy. And this is probably one of the most important supports that we can provide right now. Students are more than welcome to meet with me, hopefully with you all as mentors as well. But I think it's really important that students have really clear information about their rights, the potential consequences of actions that would extend past the university's scope. As I think our first and foremost priority in the Dean of Students office is about safety and well-being, just like Justine just mentioned. After that, I do want to mention, I know I've come here before and talked about this, but it's really important to know that our code of conduct and university policies are viewpoint neutral. And I know that that's come up a couple of times, but our policies and code applies consistently, regardless of message or motive. And our focus really in the conduct process is behavior. So what happened, not based on what our students believe or what they're advocating for, or on their, espoused or articulated moral imperative. So that's really important to us to know that like these are, our code of conduct expands and is equally again applied based on again the behavior that may have violated policy. If the code is violated, again, there are potential consequences. That's just how the process works. But at the same time, I think it's important to remind folks that the student conduct process is intended as an educational process, designed to help students navigate decision making, bring them closer to the university, learn from impact and reflect. And it's also one of the tools we use to protect the safety and preserve a learning environment where everyone can flourish. And so again, we're not proactively seeking to penalize students, but we do have to uphold our policies and our code of conduct. it's really difficult in this particular context to, say what would happen, in the conduct process based on student behavior. Every student situation is unique, and we considered it as such. But our responsibility remains the same no matter the context is, again, look at carefully at what happened, the facts, the context, and apply the code consistently and ensure that the process is fair and educational. And so at the end of the day, just like Justine mentioned, there have been questions about, information sharing. And we absolutely protect students' privacy based on the laws and policies that govern our information. And so again, we don't proactively share information, but as things are requested, we might have to. And so I would recommend questions about information sharing also be directed towards our public records office because they might have some more intimate details about how information is requested and shared. But we are not proactively sharing any information. And so with that, again, I just want to reiterate that I think, now is a time to sort of encourage peaceful protest, demonstration, and expression, and remind that like our mentorship here is really helpful. And if you need help understanding what's within our bounds, please contact me. I'm happy to sort of walk through that with folks. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Chief Wade.
Thanks, Jimmy. So, first, like we're recognizing this is difficult for many people right now. With the public events, national attention creating uncertainty on these campuses that we live on. In a time like this type of clarity, I think, helps. And the purpose of what I'm going to talk about is how UOPD works to protect the rights and the safety of the people on this campus, whether it's staff, visitors, students, anyone here. It's how we manage the risks that a protest could occur or operate within University of Oregon law or policies or the law of the state of Oregon. Our mission is for safety. We protect life first. We do this through preventing harm by our planning, communication, de-escalation. We don't police ideals. That's not why we're here. We don't worry about which side of the fence is on. We're worried about keeping people safe. We don't take sides and viewpoints. We manage safety risks so students, faculty, staff, visitors can all exercise their rights without the fear of violence, intimidation, or unsafe disruption. To me, it's important that our campus community knows that victims of crime should feel safe getting help, regardless of their status. Reporting a crime does not trigger alerts to immigration authorities. We do not report back to them. People who are experiencing domestic violence, sexual assault, trafficking, stalking, any of the hate crimes, should be able to seek help without hesitation. Our role is to help support and protect the victims or people who are experiencing crime on this campus, investigate those crimes, and connect people to resources. For UOPD officers, we do not ask about documents, immigration status, if they're supposed to be here or if they're not supposed to be here. We are here to help them with that criminal act or to get them services. The safety remains our main priority. I want to hit that so many times that is what we're about, is keeping people safe. In some limited circumstances, like a human trafficking or a hate crime or investigations where an immigration status could become relevant, we may ask that status. We might say, are you here legally because of the immigration concerns of trafficking? But there again, that's used to help protect the victims and pursue justice, not to report back to any federal authority or do anything else, but it's to get this measure of the crime that's occurring. To me, immigration enforcement requires clear boundaries. For us, we have clear boundaries when it comes to this. We follow Oregon law and the university directions along with our policy on what immigration enforcement means. We have a state-directed non-cooperation policy with ICE for any civil investigation enforcement. Civil immigration enforcement, sorry. We do not assist with civil immigration enforcement activities. We don't detain people based upon any immigration status. We don't ask about what their status is to provide any service. If someone comes and says, hey, I need into a room and they've got their Duck ID card, they get in. We don't ask what your status is, what your papers are. When questions or results or requests are arising in immigration enforcement, we evaluate them through our policy, state law, and the guidance from our university leadership and our council with the thought of campus safety and lawful obligations that we focus on. So with that directive that we do not enforce or support or help immigration enforcement, that's our clear boundaries. If they were to come to my station and say, we need information, or can you assist us with getting people, rounding up people, or anything in that regard, the answer is no, we will not. They cannot even use our building for a meeting place if they want to, or our parking lot for a rally point, because that'd be providing them any service, and we do not let them have any service possible. If a call comes on us that ICE is on campus, we will respond to help keep the peace and protect people. Our response is about safety and order, not enforcement at that point. We're also going to take a look at that credibility. If there is a concern that individuals are claiming to represent ICE, but they're not actual agents, or they're unidentified or unidentifiable, we're going to take steps that we can to verify through appropriate channels that they are federal agents. We're not going to be telling people, oh, here's their names or here's their identities, but we have ways to contact DHS directly, or FBI, or other mechanisms, or to see badges, pull people aside and say, hey, help us out here. And usually that will occur if that happens. Until identity is confirmed, we're going to treat this as a potential safety risk. We're going to make sure these people are who they say they are, and they're acting lawfully inside their own boundaries. We want to help reduce any confusion and escalation. We're trying to keep the peace. If there are protests or high-risk events, or they are on campus, we use a very simple approach, I like to think of it. We try and plan early. We have stuff in place ready to go. We try and communicate to people what our expectations are. We create that time, space, and separation, so two groups don't meet, so we don't have violence occurring. We don't have that possibility where people can be hurt. We prioritize de-escalation. We document this stuff so we can look at it later, and we can understand what we did and why we did it. If other groups show up or federal agents are present, our posture doesn't change. We prevent harm. We try and maintain space, keep the peace. If safety requires it, and the direction I've given my officers, UOPD officers will position themselves between students and outside actors to try and create some distance and reduce the risk of that escalation or that flashpoint that could occur. It's providing protection, allowing for de-escalation by us, which I believe we are trained professionals in this. Peaceful demonstrations are protected. We support those. Safety remains the standard. The campus should expect us to encourage lawful, peaceful protest, but also intervene when there's violence, threats, or property damage that can create the risk to people. Civil disobedience, it's a personal choice that can carry consequences under policies and laws depending upon the conduct. Our goal is to prevent harm, not get it to that point to where laws are being broken. Our big whole goal, yet again, prevent harm, avoid outcomes through through communications, de-escalations, and voluntary compliance. We don't want to use force. We don't want to have force used by anyone. We don't want to see anyone hurt. Our standard is a constant. We communicate, we respond, we respect the rights of everyone involved, and we're holding people accountable as best we can. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Wade. So are there any questions that folks have for Angela, Jimmy, Justine, or Chief Wade? Please raise your hand. Senator Ramos-Cottrell, you have the floor.
Yeah, good afternoon. Just one question. Jimmy, as per what you mentioned, should there be, or maybe could there be, or is there, I'm sorry, also a workshop for information for faculty on being aware of policy and, of course, the limits of rights and responsibilities when it comes to protests? I'm asking this because in addition to students wanting to know what are their rights, I have realized that a lot of us are not really sure about the extent to which we might be breaking policy by aiding into, I don't want to say the actions of students, but the interest of students to peaceful protest.
That's a great point. I think we've done like ad hoc trainings. I don't know if we've done like a significant overview, but I'm really open to working with Senate leadership to see if there's something we can do. I think it's just really important and critical that we all know, again, policy, so those who are mentoring students in their actions, that they know exactly what they're walking into. And that starts with us as mentors to sort of help these scholars, kind of figure out what their path is forward. So I'm happy to work with Diana and the rest of leadership to figure out something along those lines.
That's a good idea. I anticipate reaching out to you, Jimmy, to see what we can organize. Any other questions? Or comments?
Also, President Mason, I just put in the chat for everyone, that's from the General Counsel's websites about free speech guidelines on campus. There again, it's a document, so it doesn't have that living, being able to ask questions or talk to people, but I do think it's a good baseline that, General Counsel, just like all of us, we do support the free speech. And it's just, making sure people understand what can occur, what are some of those guidelines, and, do it. I always like, do it the right way the first time.
No. Thank you. President Moreno.
Hi, thank you for being here. I was wondering if you could speak a little bit to the possibility of alert systems. I know that there is currently a legislative concept going through Salem on mandatory ICE alerts for higher education. Could you just speak a little bit to where UOPD stands with the possibility of sending out ICE alerts?
President Moreno, that's a hard question, honestly. We've been looking at that since it popped up in the legislature. And I was actually talking to Kevin Reed after last night's meeting about this topic, trying to understand the legality of this and how that could affect it. Because there's a fine line about interfering with a governmental operation or investigation, and then the alert of drawing attention to something that could cause harm or not harm. So as of right now, we don't have anything in place to make notifications for ICE on campus or federal investigation occurring on campus, as there's various levels of what can happen. There's visa programs that are lawfully operating, and different entities have to verify status and other things like that. So there's some complexity to that I'm not even gonna say I know all about it. As of right now, though, we have nothing in place. But as that law continues to work through, Kevin Reed, our general counsel, myself, Andrea Leduc, Jamie Moffett are all taking a look at this to see how we would respond, how that works. Obviously, if something becomes law, then we have to follow law, and we, work through that and figure out what that result will be. But right now, that's almost, I would say, it's cutting edge of law on reporting or sending out those messages.
Thank you.
Senator Hoffert Hay.
Hi, thank you all for being here. This is more of a question directed towards Jimmy Howard. The difference between the student code of conduct and students facing code of conducts for potential anti-ICE action on campus, how will that change? I mean, for students versus professors, it doesn't seem like there's really like a clear line with who's allowed to participate in anti-ICE action without a clear punishment.
Well, I would say from the code of conduct, my scope is only students, so I would leave the question about like faculty matters to like someone who's like better suited for that. But I would say the main thing that you should take away from my remarks is that we are not if the action doesn't break policy, students can choose to do that without fear of any recourse, right? So if it is, let's say their protest is anti-ICE, and if they do so within our policies and procedures and expectations, then my office doesn't get involved. The only time we would get involved is if there was a policy break. So like if if there was a policy in our guidelines, which again we can talk about later, that for instance, let's say they overnight tinted or whatever, like that would be against our policies and we would have to act, right? Outside of that, again, students have the right and are encouraged to activate, protest, and engage in demonstration and expression. It just has to do so within our bounds. So there's no automatic anything, and so it really is about what happens, behaviors, and there's also due process as a part of that as well. So I hope that answers your question, but I would leave the questions about faculties to other folks.
Yeah, thank you. And I totally understand if that's still kind of in the works of what the punishment would be for faculty. I will say that it is really difficult to stay within the student code of conduct, considering that a lot of the things, even such as decibel level, are breaking code of conduct. So yeah, but thank you for your time.
Yeah, of course.
Senator Garcia Caro.
Yes, I wanted to thank Bella for that last comment in particular, but also, I just raised my hand to comment again the UO police and all of the actors involved almost 2 years ago now in the peaceful decampment of our students who were encamped in protest for the ongoing genocide on Gaza. And to reflect collectively, use this moment to reflect collectively on the fact that violence was not used at the time. It was, I think it actually offers now as a community a foundation to think carefully about where we stand as a community in this little valley in the fictional country called the United States of America that is possibly dissolving in front of our eyes, as we understand it, as President Scholz eloquently evoked the very fragile political situation that we inhabit. And so all politics are local politics. Here we're locally with the community that we have, and the strength that we have been nourishing since then and before then are our collective strengths here. And so outside interlopers and any outside federal deployment near us or within us, we need to understand how we will approach it. But I think we are a stronger community because we stood together, despite our diverse viewpoints and despite our different actions and viewpoints. We were able to hold the community together then, and I hope that we can continue with the same set of generous approaches to community building. Thank you all for your very engaged participation today.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions today? I think from my perspective, just my goal is to make sure that folks understand their rights and their responsibilities, and the consequences of different types of actions. So whether it's breaking a student conduct policy versus potentially facing federal charges for obstruction when you stand in front of an officer or something. So I just want folks to be, my concern has been safety. And then in terms of trying to be a mentor is helping folks understand the risks of different types of protests, and how we can continue to stand up for support each other, but also keep our community safe. Unfortunately, the federal government and federal agents haven't been following law in a lot of cases. And so it's really hard to say if this happens, then that will occur. And we know we've seen the consequences of that. That behavior by them has led to tragedy in Minneapolis. So I'm just concerned about keeping people safe and our student body safe, and our faculty and our colleagues safe here on campus, our staff. And I want to thank Angela, Jimmy, Justine, Chief Wade for coming here today and answering our questions and engaging in information sharing and dialogue with our Senate community. It's one of the ways that we're able to push out information. There are other ways that we can continue to share this information with our community. Please feel free to pass along ideas, recommendations, or we can help put folks in touch with others. We already have one action item, which is to do a faculty workshop or faculty and staff workshop for those of us who work with student activists and may want to provide strong advice to our students. So any other ideas or questions? Right, thank you. So now, because Abhijit isn't here today, it is now time for notice of motions. Senators, are there any motions for which you would like to provide notice for consideration at our upcoming meetings? All right. So seeing no hands up, I'd like to close our meeting with adjournment. I'd like to entertain a motion to adjourn. Is there a motion to adjourn today?
I so move.
Okay, great. And a second?
Second.
Great, thank you. And so without objections, the meeting is adjourned at 4:23 p.m. Thank you, everyone.